Her name was Amelia Hart, a 34-year-old single mother living with her daughter in the suburbs of Chicago. That evening, in the gold-covered grand hall of the Bellmore Hotel, her brother snatched a birthday card from the hands of the 6-year-old girl, tore it in half, and dropped it onto a wine tray in front of more than 100 guests. Nora froze. The entire family saw it. Not one of them said a word. What they did not know was that only a few hours earlier, Amelia had signed documents that could determine who would still be allowed to set foot inside this hotel after tomorrow. Richard Hart's 65th birthday celebration was being held on the top floor of the Bellmore. Crystal lights cast their glow over elegant dresses and glasses of champagne. Ethan, Amelia's older brother, moved through the crowd as though the entire room belonged to him. Their father had just handed him, and Ethan believed he had what it took to carry the Hart family into high society. Amelia arrived in a simple, dark blue dress, no diamonds, no assistant. Margaret, her mother, frowned. "Could you not have made yourself look a little less poor?" Amelia did not answer. She had heard words like those for years. Her silence had always been mistaken for weakness. Nora held the handmade card tightly against her chest. On it was a drawing of her grandfather standing between the three of them, with the words, "Family is where no one gets left behind," written underneath. The little girl had spent the entire afternoon coloring his tie to match the one in an old photograph of Richard. When mother and daughter approached the main table, Ethan raised a hand to stop them. "This area is for family and sponsors." Amelia looked at the row of chairs. Her name was not there. Neither was Nora's. "I am your sister." Ethan laughed loudly enough to make the people nearby turn around. "Family members are still expected to contribute. You push papers around doing work no one understands, then show up as though you have the right to sit beside the people who made tonight possible." Nora stepped forward timidly and held out the card. "I only wanted to give Grandpa a present." Ethan looked at the gift as though it were something filthy. He snatched it from her, tore it in half, and dropped it onto the wine tray of a passing server. "Do not bring cheap handmade things into a place like this." Nora's lips began to tremble. She did not cry right away. That silence hurt Amelia more than any sob could have. She looked toward her father. Richard turned his face away. Margaret said Ethan was simply under pressure. Vanessa, his wife, raised her phone to record, her lips curling into an amused smile. No one wanted to ruin the party. No one wanted to challenge the pride of the family. Amelia bent down and picked up the 2 pieces of the card, now soaked with wine. She wiped Nora's hands, helped her into her coat, and led her out of the grand hall. Behind them, Ethan raised his glass, and the crowd began laughing again, as though nothing had happened. When they reached the empty hallway, Nora asked in a very small voice, "Mommy, are we really part of the family?" Amelia knelt and wrapped her daughter in a tight embrace. "Yes, but sometimes people who share the same blood forget how to act like family." The phone in her pocket vibrated. A message from her legal advisor appeared on the screen. "The deal is complete. Control of the Bellmore and every contract held by the Hart Company has been transferred to your fund." Amelia looked through the glass at the brightly lit city below. Inside the grand hall behind her, Ethan was still celebrating his future. He had no idea that by the next morning, that future would be sitting on the desk of the woman he had just driven away from the family table. Amelia's apartment was located in a quiet neighborhood on the north side of Chicago. It was much smaller than the mansion where she had grown up, but every corner held a warmth the old house had never known. On the windowsill sat the plants Nora had grown herself. On the refrigerator were crayon drawings held in place by star-shaped magnets. There were no crystal lights, no expensive wine. But here, no one needed permission to sit at the table. That night, Amelia made creamy pasta for her daughter. Nora sat in silence, turning her fork around and around on the plate without eating. The 2 wine-stained pieces of the card rested on the table beside a roll of clear tape. The little girl looked up. "Can you tape it back together, Mom?" Amelia looked at the crooked words Nora had written. "Family is where no one gets left behind." Her throat tightened, but she still managed to smile. "I will tape it back together, but we are not giving it to Grandpa anymore. I am going to keep it." Nora lowered her head. After a moment, she asked why Uncle Ethan hated her. Amelia did not know how to answer. Ethan did not hate Nora. What was worse was that he did not believe her feelings were worth caring about. To Ethan, anyone who offered him no benefit was nothing more than unnecessary decoration in the picture of his success. She placed a hand on her daughter's hair. "It is not your fault. Some people hurt others because they are afraid of being seen for who they truly are." After Nora fell asleep, Amelia sat alone in the living room. It was nearly 1 in the morning when her phone began vibrating again and again. The first message was from Ethan. "You embarrassed Dad tonight. Leaving in the middle of the party made everyone think our family has problems. You had better apologize before he decides to cut you out of the will." The second message arrived immediately afterward. "And do not forget who introduced you to that asset management company years ago. Without this family, you would still be nothing more than a single mother who could not afford her rent." Amelia read both messages without any change in her expression. 3 years earlier, Ethan had introduced her to a low-level executive in the financial industry. He still believed that minor connection had saved her life. He did not know that Amelia had left that company after only 7 months. He did not know that she had founded North Star Capital with the money she had earned from her first successful deals. And he certainly did not know that her investment fund now managed the assets of several of the largest hotel corporations in the United States. Amelia opened the computer she kept inside a locked cabinet. The screen lit up, revealing North Star's internal operating system. A list of newly transferred assets appeared before her. The Bellmore Hotel, Hart Event Company, 3 commercial credit agreements, a mortgage loan in the names of Richard and Margaret Hart. She opened Ethan's file. His company had fallen nearly 2 months behind on venue fees. Deposits from dozens of new clients had been used to cover losses from older events. Ethan was not building an empire. He was using tomorrow's money to conceal today's failures. Worse still, he had used his parents' mansion as collateral without fully explaining the risks to them. Amelia leaned back in her chair. She had once believed Ethan's arrogance was only a mask. Now she understood it was a curtain hiding a room already on fire. Her legal advisor called. "We can send the breach of contract notice tonight. Under the new terms, the Hart Company must provide a full accounting of its cash flow within 2 days." Amelia looked toward Nora's bedroom. The little girl was asleep with one hand resting on the card that had been taped back together. She did not want revenge over a single insult. She wanted to stop Ethan from using money to decide who deserved respect. "Send the notice." The advisor was silent for a second. "Under North Star's name, or your personal name?" Amelia closed the computer. "Under mine." A few minutes later, the official email left the system. It was addressed to Ethan Hart, Richard Hart, and every member of the family company's board of directors. The final line contained only one sentence. "All temporary operating authority will be transferred to the new owner of the Bellmore, Miss Amelia Hart." At that same moment, inside a luxury apartment on the other side of the city, Ethan's phone lit up on the table. He read the email once. Then he read it again. The wineglass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. For the first time in his life, Ethan understood that the sister he had always looked down on had never been beneath him. She had simply stood quietly behind him, waiting for him to walk to the edge on his own. At 6:30 in the morning, Ethan Hart stormed into the lobby of the Bellmore Hotel with his shirt only half buttoned and his face drained of color. He had called the bank manager, his private attorney, and 3 members of the board, but none of them had given him the answer he wanted to hear. The Hart Company's operating account had been temporarily frozen for an audit. Payments to suppliers were being withheld. 2 major clients had just requested contract cancellations after learning that the Bellmore was reviewing every agreement connected to Ethan's company. The hotel lobby, usually calm and quiet, was now filled with ringing phones and employees arguing. A technical crew stood beside the front desk, waiting to hear whether they should continue building the stage for that evening's event. Ethan slammed his hand onto the counter. "No one is allowed to stop working. I am the one in charge here." The hotel manager looked at him uneasily. "Sir, the suspension order came from the new owner." Ethan clenched his teeth. "Amelia does not own anything. She is just a finance employee living in a rented apartment." At that moment, the glass doors at the front opened. Amelia walked in with 2 attorneys and the head of North Star Capital's audit division. She wore a black suit, her hair neatly tied back. No expensive jewelry, no showy security detail. Yet everyone in the lobby straightened as she passed. Ethan stared at his sister as though she were a stranger. "What have you done?" Amelia placed a folder on the counter. "I ordered an audit of a company that is using client deposits to conceal its losses. That is not revenge. That is the responsibility of an owner." Ethan snatched the folder. The first pages clearly listed overdue debts, negative cash flow, and fabricated contracts he had used to persuade his parents to keep investing. Sweat began to run down his temples. "You do not understand business. These numbers are only temporary. I'm about to sign a major contract." Amelia looked directly into his eyes. "The contract with the Weston Group was cancelled 3 weeks ago. You knew that, but you still used their name to borrow more money." The room fell silent. Ethan turned toward the chief financial officer. The man lowered his head and did not dare look back. In that moment, Ethan understood that Amelia did not merely know what was happening, she knew everything. Amelia's phone vibrated. Margaret was calling, her voice filled with panic. "You have to stop this. Your father just found out that the house was used as collateral." He nearly fainted. Amelia closed her eyes for a second. Hearing her mother cry hurt, but the pain was not enough to force her back into her old place. "You should ask Ethan why he put your house into a deal he knew could fail." Ethan grabbed the phone from her hand. "Mom, do not listen to her. I will handle this." Richard's voice came through from the other end, weak but furious. "You told me it was only a formality. You said the house was not at risk." Ethan stood motionless. The confidence that had once allowed him to control the entire family disappeared. In front of the employees, the lawyers, and the people who had once admired him, he had no story left to tell. Vanessa emerged from the elevator with her phone already raised. "Amelia, you are trying to destroy this family over a child's card." Amelia turned toward her. "Turn off the camera." Vanessa gave a mocking laugh. "If I post this online, everyone will see how cruel you are." One of North Star's attorneys stepped forward and placed a copy of the live stream from the party in front of Vanessa. It showed Ethan tearing Nora's card, while Vanessa's laughter could be heard in the background. Amelia spoke slowly. "You have the right to post whatever you want. But this video will also be submitted as evidence if you distort what happened or publish images of my daughter without permission." Vanessa lowered her phone. Ethan suddenly moved toward Amelia. "What do you want? Money? A seat on the board, or do you want me to get on my knees and apologize?" Amelia did not step back. "I want a complete report within 2 days. I want you to repay every dollar that was misused. And I want you to stay away from Nora until she feels safe." Ethan laughed, but the sound broke apart in his throat. "And what if I refuse?" Amelia signaled to the hotel manager. The doors leading to the executive offices locked immediately. "Then the Hart Company will lose the right to hold events at the Bellmore. The creditors will be notified, and our parents' home will be protected by removing you from financial control." Ethan stared at the sealed doors. He had always believed power meant speaking the loudest, spending the most money, and making other people afraid. That morning, he finally understood that real power did not need to shout. Amelia only had to stand still. His entire false empire collapsed at her feet on its own. 2 days later, Ethan Hart entered the conference room on the top floor of the Bellmore with bloodshot eyes and a wrinkled suit. The gold watch was gone from his wrist. So was the smug smile that had once silenced everyone around him. To pay part of the urgent debt, he had sold his new sports car and withdrawn every dollar remaining in his personal account. Seated across from him were Amelia, 3 North Star attorneys, and their parents. Richard sat with his head lowered. In only 2 days, his hair seemed to have grown noticeably grayer. Margaret clutched a handkerchief, her eyes swollen from crying. For the first time, they were seeing the figures Ethan had hidden for months. He had not only borrowed money against their home, he had also forged his father's signature on 2 additional guarantee documents. Margaret looked at her son, her voice trembling. "How could you do this to us?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no words were convincing enough to cover the truth. He had wanted to become successful faster than Amelia. He wanted the entire family to keep believing that he was the only person capable of saving them. Every time the company lost money, he borrowed more to protect his image. Every lie led to another lie until there was nowhere left to retreat. Amelia placed an agreement on the table. North Star will purchase every debt connected to our parents' house. The house will not be seized. In return, Ethan must step down from his executive position and transfer all financial records to the audit team. Ethan's head snapped up. "You are stealing my company." Amelia looked at him calmly. "This company was never truly yours. You only used it to make everyone believe you were more important than they were." The words plunged the room into silence. Ethan turned toward his father, waiting for the protection he had always received. But Richard did not look at him. He was looking at Amelia, the daughter he had once called unambitious simply because she never boasted about what she had achieved. He spoke very softly. "I was wrong about you." Amelia did not feel victorious. She only felt tired. For years, she had hoped that one day her father would understand her, but when the apology finally came, it could not erase the image of Nora standing in the grand hall with the torn card in her hands. 1 week later, the Hart family gathered again at the old house. There were no guests, no cameras, no expensive glasses of wine. Margaret cooked dinner herself and placed a small cake in the center of the table. Nora stood behind Amelia as they entered. She still remembered Ethan's laughter. She still remembered the feeling of everyone looking at her as though she did not belong there. Ethan sat at the far end of the table, his face gaunt and exhausted. When he saw Nora, he stood up, then awkwardly sat back down. On the table in front of him was a new card. He had made it himself from blue paper, with rough and uneven cuts. Inside was only one sentence. "I am sorry I made you believe that you did not belong in this family." Nora did not take it immediately. She looked at her mother. Amelia did not pressure her daughter to forgive him. She understood that an apology was not a key that could instantly reopen a door that had been broken. "You can take it when you are ready." Nora thought for a moment, then placed the card beside her plate. "I have not forgiven you yet." Ethan lowered his head. "I understand." It was the first time he had accepted an answer without trying to change it. During dinner, no one spoke about money or power. Richard asked Nora about school. Margaret placed more food in the girl's bowl. Ethan remained quiet, listening more than he spoke. When the cake was cut, Nora did not ask anyone for permission. She served herself a large piece and carried it to her mother. Amelia smiled. She realized that the purpose of the fight had never been to force Ethan onto his knees or make the family fear her. All she had ever wanted was for Nora to grow up without believing that a person's worth depended on money, status, or anyone else's permission. Before they left, Richard stood on the porch and asked whether things could ever return to the way they had been. Amelia looked through the window. Nora was laughing beside her grandmother, but she still kept her distance from Ethan. "No, Dad. And perhaps that is for the best." She took her daughter's hand and walked down the steps. Behind them was a family learning how to live without lies. Ahead of them was their own path, quiet but free. Amelia no longer needed anyone to acknowledge her power, because the woman they had once looked down on had done the most powerful thing of all. She had protected her daughter's heart without losing her own.